Hey, what's up, and welcome to this episode of EST, the podcast for established church leaders. I'm your host, Josh King.
I am also a host here. Sam Rayner is my name, and I'm a high mileage pastor at this point.
How long have you been serving as a pastor?
20 years.
Wow.
20 years. Been preaching for 20 years. 44. Started when I was 24, bivocationally. And yeah, I guess I'm still young because I'm like 16 years younger than the average pastor, but I don't feel it.
Yeah. I started full-time ministry right about 17 to 18 years old. So let's go with 18 just to make sure. So 23 years I've been in full-time ministry. And so as a 41-year-old, that's a lot of, I guess I'm high mileage too. They should go ahead and take me out to the pasture and, let me go for a long walk or something like that. Because
I've been
doing this a while.
I told my wife, I kind of have like a retirement date in my head already. I don't, I know church members listen to this, and so I don't want them to freak out because they love me, and they would say they don't want me to retire, of course. But I'll just say this: I don't want to be 70 and still being a lead pastor. I don't think I can be. I don't know that I'll be capable. And I realize that there are those out there who are. I just don't know that I will be. If I could retire and actually retire and do it right, I will. I will.
And we should probably do an episode on that, just retirement age of pastors. I've just seen so many go bad, like past 65. And it's almost like you just can't do it anymore. So I don't want to be the lead pastor after the age 60. I still will probably need to be working or want to be working, all that kind of stuff, but I don't want to be the lead anymore at that point. I just think you just need a different age to do it. So
I agree. I have two dreams. One involves baseball and the other involves ministry. The mascot race that they do at baseball games, where all the mascots. I want to get into one of those suits at Tropicana Field. Of course, it wouldn't be Tropicana Field. It will be whatever the new ballpark they're building. And I want to be Raymond or DJ Kitty, and I want to run around the baseball field in the mascot race. Just one time. I don't have to do it ongoing. Just one time. And that's my baseball dream. And then my ministry dream is just to be on the First Impressions team, because I'm an extrovert, and it's like your job is simply to talk to everybody. And I'm like, I'm living the dream. I'm living the dream.
Life.
That's what I want to do.
So we've kind of circled around this a bit, and we'll get into it more in just right after we talk about our sponsor. But the idea here is extending the mileage of your pastorate. We want to make it to where you make it all the way to 65 or 70 or whatever that is you're trying to do. And that requires some ongoing maintenance. So we're going to talk about that. But before we do, Sam, tell them about church teams.
Yeah, church teams. Been doing it a while, too. We talk about how long we've been doing it. Church teams really was at the forefront of this whole church management software boom. They're not new players. They know what they're doing.
Right.
Boyd Pelly and his team are really experienced, and you should check them out. You can go to est.church to get a free offer. As we've mentioned many times on the show, if it involves software systems, they have an answer. If you want to do project management, they can help you. Texting, some sort of text to church system, they got you covered. Giving, their giving module is great. So est.church is where you can get the free offer. Tell them that we sent you. Of course, if you go to the landing page there, they'll know. But they've also got some good content. And I mentioned this once before, I think in a few episodes back. Boyd actually writes some really good articles. So if you go to their website, churchteams.com, he's got good content. You should sign up for their newsletter. Even if you're like, I don't know that I want to purchase something. Fair enough. Go get their free newsletter. They produce a lot of good content. So churchteams.com or est.church, and support our sponsor, please.
Yep. All right. So this idea came to me when I was thinking about regular maintenance on my 4Runner, and you got to, you're supposed to change the oil every 5,000 miles. And there's a whole list, and a lot of people don't know this about their vehicles, but you could, from the manufacturer, you could say, this is when you change the blades, this is when you change the brakes, this is when you, everything, every belt, every, fluid in your vehicle. And a lot of people know the oil change one, but fewer people know about the rotating the tires and what that means and how you do that. On and on and on. So I started thinking about this. These are just regular practices, just regular things that you're supposed to do. Is there regular things that you can do as a pastor that will extend the mileage, that you'll get the most out of your pastorate? Just simple things that you could remember doing. One of the small things, we're not really going to talk about this, but one that I've been incorporating, Sam, is I ask 2 questions before I give an answer. In my mind, I'm just asking 2 questions before I give an answer. I found that I give better answers. I've also found that it just helps me not say stupid things. So that's a small thing, but we've got some bigger ones. The first one, Sam, is don't
take all your vacation.
Take all of your PTO or your vacate. We call it PTO, but yeah. Talk about that. Why is that something that why isn't that a sin? Because you need to be working hard. The Lord doesn't take a vacation, so why?
So here's the deal. I mean, and I know there's a lot of bivocational pastors, and many of them that listen to the show, and they're like, yeah, I don't get vacation days. But whatever you can do to get away regularly, that regular rhythm, you need to do it. Nobody in your church, no church member, I don't care how close you are to them, nobody is going to think that you are such a noble person because you only took half your vacation days. Nobody cares. Take all of them. Use them. Be with your family. Take a 2-day camping trip. Take a 1-day excursion with your wife. Whatever you got to do. If you get 3 weeks paid vacation, you should take 3 weeks. There's not a person in your church that's going to go, he's such a great pastor. He never takes all of his vacation. Nobody cares. So
they
extend
probably don't
your
even
mileage.
Know. Yeah.
They don't even,
probably don't
that's
even
my
know.
point.
Yeah.
And even if they do know, what they'll say is, well, I mean, they'll say, well, you should probably take all your vacation. If they serve on the personnel committee or elder board, you should probably take this. So you're only making yourself out to be a false martyr where I just work so hard. I don't get the vacation days that I need, blah, blah, blah. Well, you're not taking them because nobody's asking you to not take your vacation. And I get that there are those who would say, well, if I'm away too much, I'm going to have a coup. Yes, if you take 3 weeks in a row, a lot of times that's ill-advised. But take that extra day here, an extra day there, 2 days here. Spread them out, extend your mileage.
Yeah, you know what I did? This is just an off-the-hand random recommendation. My wife had surgery, so we were unable to take a normal, week-long vacation this summer. So for the month of July, I took every Thursday off. I already have Fridays off. So, and one of them was 4th of July. It was on a Thursday. So for like 4 or 5 weeks in a row, I had off on Thursdays. So I had essentially a 3-day weekend every week in July. So I still kept my normal rhythms. I still kept my, sermon planning. I was still in the office. I did my meetings. I just planned ahead, moved all my meetings off of Thursdays, and it was actually really fun. I felt much more refreshed. I was relaxed. It didn't upset anything, and I got to spend more time with my family. So there's an idea. If you can't take a whole chunk off, then consider just giving yourself some extra 3-day weekends every couple months. That's a small thing to do, but it was kind of fun.
I think that's great. You hear about some of these large church pastors that always take the summer off or whatever. I think that's ill-advised and unnecessary. But hey, my wife had surgery. I just want to make sure that I'm at home a little more. July's a good time to do that. I'm going to do this plan where I've worked it all out. That's excellent. And that's the kind of point that you and I are making here is you're going to be a much better pastor in the long run if you take the days that you need. And I've
Yeah.
learned to do that. I now take all of the days that my church gives me. And sometimes it's just like I'm still kind of working, but it's like I'm going to work from home today on a day that I typically don't work from home. And I might be doing some other things. Like I might write a book or whatever, where I'm still working, but I kind of need to take a vacation day. Like I don't need to be burning church time on this. And I'll do that. I'll catch up on some things that I need to do. So schedule a bunch of doctor's appointments or whatever, and just take you get sick time for that usually. But my point is a day here and there is actually really helpful. It's really helpful.
And in the broader scheme of just taking a break, same thing with preaching. Most churches are okay with you not preaching 52 Sundays a year. Find out what that is. Maybe you got to talk to the personnel team. Maybe if you're interviewing with a church, I told this church I don't want to preach 12 times a year. That's my goal. Now this year it's going to be like 7, and we're going to work up to 12. But take the break. And what I had to do one day was I just had to sit my butt down and say, okay, look at the schedule. When am I not preaching? And just schedule them out. It's just huge, just such a break. I'm not, and I keep thinking of this as like a car engine. If you were running it at a high, whatever, RPMs for too long, constantly, you're going to burn it out. And that's what we do to ourselves. So downshift every so often. So that's it. Take a break. Take your vacation.
Engine braking is a good way to go for those of you who still drive manual transmissions, which I love. I've driven more years of manual than not. Unfortunately, I don't have a manual now. But the next thing is a bit cliche to say, but I think we need to go there. Don't sweat the small things. And when you're early in your ministry, everything's a big thing. Because you don't know how to handle it. But what would you say is a small thing that you thought was a big thing a while ago, and now you've realized it's not a big thing?
Branding. It's one of those things that I'm naturally good at. I just have a design eye. And so logos, all that kind of stuff. Now we're working through a process now of updating that because it needs to be done, but I'm not nearly as concerned about it. I'm just, it'll get done when it gets done. I think there's just anything that falls into that category of image where other pastors are looking at my church and I'm somehow concerned about that or worried that I'm projecting some sort of image that they're going to be pleased with. Man, that's a small thing. If you get it done, you get it done. If you don't worry about it. I always tell myself, or I say this quite a bit, don't sweat the small stuff, and nearly all of it is small. Almost all of it is small. So just relax. Just do what you can and then carry on. What about you? What's a thing that you used to think was a thing and it's just not that big a deal?
The guilt that I would feel over not attending every meeting. So as a young pastor, I felt the need to have input at every committee meeting, every deacons meeting. And I didn't burn out. It was not that. I just think people got tired of me showing up to all of the stuff. And then I was setting the wrong precedent too, because then when I didn't show up, it was like, what's wrong? So you do need to be at a lot of meetings, and you should not be skipping out on everything. There's a balance there. And so I felt the need just to be present. And it was because I believed that my input was needed, and it wasn't. And people got along just fine without me. In fact, my dad gave me the best advice ever. And I still to this day live by it. And he picked up on it. And he this was years and years and years ago. And he said, Sam, if you do less, people will love you more. And I've lived by that. And it's 100% true. Stop doing so much. People feel like you're, in their business all the time. Do less and people will love you more. And he's been right about that. He's been totally right about that. Again, I'm not saying be lazy. I'm not saying skip out. I'm not saying you don't ever show up to a deacon's meeting. But there's nothing wrong with you. If there's 12 of them a year or 15 of them a year, there's nothing wrong with you being at like 10 of them instead of all of them.
Yeah, I used to lead in such a way that like every meeting, every decision we had to do, I was just going to put 110% into this decision. I was going to make sure the very right decision was made. And I've moved so far away from, I'm not as concerned that we do everything perfectly, just that we get some progress. That's all I'm really worried about. And so, yeah, I've walked away in my new pastorate here. I've been here 8 months. Every meeting I've walked away from, that's not exactly the decision I would make. It's not. But we got better. We did something a little bit, and there was buy-in, and everybody was together on it. And that's good. And here's the deal, man. I've just seen much more measurable progress and momentum built by not pushing for perfection on all the small things. And maybe that's the same thing I mean by logos and branding and all of that. Just progress. Just every meeting, just ask for a little bit of progress, and that's good. And we just get so wrapped up in every decision as if you can't change it later. Later on, just, a year from now, we'll just revisit it and get a little bit more progress. So that attitude has, I'm telling you, in the last 8 months, really created a lot of, I can feel my heart. It's like an oil change. I just changed oil, and I feel like everything's moving a lot better. So take a break. Don't sweat the small stuff. What's next?
And then focus. This is something we actually do consultations on at Church Answers. Focus on one thing at a time for 6 months at a time. And what I mean by that is you've got all the regular stuff you need to do. You got to have your groups. You got to be preaching. Most churches have a Sunday, Wednesday rhythm or something similar. Even if it's
right.
Or if it's just Sundays, they have some sort of rhythm where worship team has to be on the stage and you need volunteers for the children's ministry. There's things that always need to be done. But you as a leader, you see so many things that need work, and you just feel this need to like do them all at once or tackle several projects at once. And really, you can focus on one goal for 6 months and just do that one thing. And then once you solve the issue, the next 6 months, you focus on another thing. And then over time, guess what? You're going to do a lot.
Yeah.
We still have bathrooms at West Bradenton that need renovating. And it drives me insane. But we had so many campus problems when I arrived. There was no way we could possibly solve all of them at the same time. So when I make a joke about it, I've figured out the line that puts people at ease. When you get new people coming into the church, I just feel this need to apologize for our bathrooms. But rather than apologizing, I will ask them. I say, we have options for you. If you need a bathroom from the 1960s, the 1970s, the 1980s, the 1990s, or the 2000s, and today, we have you covered. And you just let me know what decade or era is your preference, and I can tell you where those bathrooms are. So it still bothers me that we still have renovation needs, although we've been tackling these projects year after year, and slowly but surely things have gotten a whole lot better. And when you just focus on one thing every 6 months, just one thing, like one big action item beyond the normal stuff, you really will accomplish a lot more than you think over the course of like 5 years.
I cannot agree more. My personality is like, if we can do it, let's just go ahead and do it. Let's go ahead and tackle that. I'll get this group working on that project, and that group working on that project, that group working on that project. Well, when we're talking about the topic of extending your pastoral mileage, you're working on all of those projects. You're giving a little bit of yourself constantly. And so slow down a little bit. 6 months, one project every 6 months is a fantastic pace to keep. You may feel a different pace. It may be, I don't know, whatever the pace is. You don't want to start a new one every 3 months, but wrap it up within 6. That's okay. And so just come up with that pace. I find myself here because there's so much momentum, just constantly telling people things like, yeah, I hear you, and I agree with you. It's on the list. But right now, let's focus on this right here. And in the past, I would have been like, yes, you're right. Let's tackle that too. You lead that, I'll lead this. We'll all go in together. But just some phrases like, the thing that you're complaining about right now, I hear it. I agree with you. I've got it on the list. I've even got some thoughts on when we get to that point. But I tell you, I've told people, you know what, like March of next year is when I planned on having that conversation. Can we have this conversation in March of next year? And it just, what it does is it doesn't show that nobody thinks I'm lazy. Nobody thinks that I'm sitting around not doing anything. They all regularly think I'm doing probably more than I am doing. But my point is that I am trying to keep pace and direction and intentionality are just as important as accomplish and success. So really work on that.
All right, this next one, I think some people need to hear it, and I'm just going to say it. Don't spend 30 hours a week on your sermons. Stop it. Stop it. That used to be me, where I just had to craft the most perfect sermon, and it wasn't. Now, please don't skimp on the Word of God. I can hear, probably not our audience. I think it's another audience, but like where they think that, I don't think it's our audience, honestly.
Probably not.
But I can hear a certain audience saying that, that's the primary part of the church, and you should pour yourself into that, and it's the central feature of everything. And if you're not spending 40 hours a week on your sermon, you're not a good pastor. And I'll just say, I think they're wrong. There's only so many hours that you can dedicate to things. There's 24 hours in a day, and you have a family and a life. I think you're really missing out on a lot of things other things that you should be doing when you're spending too much time on your sermons. And I'll put that mark. Really, a new pastor may spend a little more time, because you've never done this before, and it's going to take you a little longer, and you want them to be really good. But I'm at the point now where if I can't write a sermon, most of my sermons, I'll just put it this way, most of my sermons I write in the 12 to 16 hour time frame. And I try not to go past 16 hours at all.
I've never clocked myself, but I would just off the top of my head, I think that's about where I am. It is surprising to me because that camp that yells about this, they're very high on education. They all have PhDs and doctorates and
most of them have never pastored a church.
Yeah, probably their masters are too long. That's my beef with the MDiv and the THM. But my curiosity is, with the more education you get, the quicker you should get at this stuff.
Yes.
You should learn it and be able to better master the preparation of the sermon. The other thing, and we're going to do an episode on this coming up, so I hope that if you have not yet subscribed, make sure you subscribe so that you don't miss this episode. But there's a difference in my mind about the calling and the vocation of pastoral work right now. And I'm not going to unpack it all right now, but if I was bivocational, and let's say I was an insurance salesman and I was also preaching, the majority of my pastoral work would be preaching, because that's what I have time to do. I got to prep that sermon, do the preaching, and then maybe make some visits. But the most of my day is doing my insurance work. The vocational job of pastoring, it's a job. We've got things to do. We've got meetings and planning and keeping the structure up and going and systems and all that sort of stuff. So if you're spending the vast majority of your vocation on the preparation of the sermon, I think that may be the reason for a lot of your stress, a lot of your twisted up identity that's attached to your sermons and your performance on the Sunday mornings. And so, yes, all of that is very philosophical, and we could probably tease it out in another episode, but I agree with you. Don't kill yourself. Don't try to build your identity on some platform about the preaching. Deliver the Word of God, point people to Jesus, make much of Jesus, and that'll help you out in the long run.
It will extend your mileage, because you'll find yourself needing to do all the other stuff, but feeling guilty because I didn't put 40 hours into my sermon. You don't need to. Again, if you're inexperienced, you're probably going to need a little more time, but give yourself a couple or 3 years. That's how long it took me to figure out how to preach. I started preaching without ever reading a book on preaching or taking a class on preaching. I just started doing it. I don't know that that's advised, but I spent a lot. Actually, when I was bivocational, I did, like, I would go back up to work at night and work till about midnight doing my sermons. So I probably was putting about 8 hours a week into my sermons when I was bivocational. And a lot of people would say, yeah, it showed. But you know, earlier on, you may need to do a little more. But if you're an experienced preacher and you know what you're doing, you don't need to be spending 30 hours a week. Extend your mileage, shorten the time that you're doing your sermons, and it'll probably go a long way. Last thing, and I think most people know this, but let's just say it. Stop reacting viscerally to all the complaints. You don't need to defend yourself. A lot of times people are just venting. They don't mean it personally. And even if they do mean it personally, they'll go back to work the next day and forget that they even made the complaint. I think we overdo this whole concept of people are complaining. Well, they are, but you feel it more than they mean it. Does that make sense?
Yes. Yeah. Boy, I struggle with this. You know, and I think we all do. The people are complaining about this or they said that, and I react. And you know, leaders act; they don't react. So, yes, that's an environment that has created in that moment. You need to act in the moment. Maybe your action is nothing. You don't respond, or you say, you know, thank you for that. One of my counselors one time said, I was, you know, telling her my psychologist or whatever you call them. I was telling her about this one situation where there was this woman. She was chair of the personnel team, and she was just dumping all this extra work on me. And one day she says, my counselor says, "You don't have to do anything she tells you, right? Like, you don't have to do it." And it caught me in my tracks because I was like, well, I guess I don't. I don't. She was just making suggestions, and I was following them. You don't have to react. You don't have to do what they're complaining about. So when it comes to this whole regular maintenance and you know, extending your mileage, what I'm trying to learn is that your feelings are the check engine lights. They're indicators on the dashboard. Once there's a feeling of, in this moment I feel insecure, or in this moment I feel angry, or in this moment I feel pride, your feelings are there not to tell you reality, but to show you that reality has shifted. So feel the feeling and then ask yourself, why do I feel angry right now? What is the thing that I need to adjust? A lot of times it's just your own sin. You need to, you know, do that kind of stuff. But sometimes it could be as simple as saying, hey, when you say that, it feels like a personal attack. And, you know, that hurts my feelings. Is that what you mean by that? Is that the intention that you're trying to do? It's amazing if you just act in the moment instead of just react. Oh yeah, well, you're a cotton-headed ninny-muggins. Then that's not gonna accomplish anything. So your feelings are indicators when it comes to extending the mileage of your vehicle.
I really like that metaphor. I have a light on my dash that's just burned out. It's been used so much. That's the argue light. Mine is the, oh, you think that? Well, I know better, and I'm going to argue with you about this. And I just have to not do that, because the vast majority of people that are coming to you saying some sort of complaint, mild or intense, whatever it is on that spectrum, the vast majority of them are not looking to like have you removed from leadership, to wreck your life. Now, maybe they want you to do something.
Yeah.
But they're probably going to get over it like in 24 hours. And you may say, that's not fair. You know, that they can do that and I can't really respond in kind. Not kindly, just in kind. It's not fair. But that's the nature of being in leadership, and that's the nature of being a shepherd, and that's the nature of being a spiritual leader, is you're supposed to be the bigger spiritual person, and that's hard. But yeah, you don't have to react viscerally. Listen and give it 24 hours. Give yourself 24 hours. And honestly, 99% of the stuff will just fade away. Like, it'll just go away. And then the 1% that keeps popping up regularly, you probably have to deal with that. But you're going to cause yourself to, you're going to give yourself more to-do items if you react viscerally to every or most of the complaints, because people will then react back. And rather than diffusing it by just smiling and nodding or listening, or, you know, as you have said, just asking a couple of questions, instead of diffusing it, you're actually creating more work for yourself, more stressful work, and that's going to shorten the lifespan of your vehicle. For using that same analogy, your engine's going to burn out more quickly.
Yeah, I'm not saying don't deal with it. It's just how you're dealing with it. Don't like Sam's saying, react viscerally, which means you get all up in your feelings. You're just responding. You're reacting. It may
You're
just
revving your
be
engine
like,
too high is what you're doing there.
yeah, and you're putting attention on it. So instead, calm the whole thing down. I just love to calm down and be like, okay, in my mind, I'm thinking, this person just insulted me, questioned my character. But what comes out is, okay, I hear you. I see that you're upset about this. Tell me more. I just want to make sure that we're on the same page, because I may not be after what you think I'm after. And I'll tell you this, I don't want to fight with you because I want us to get along. So
Because
when
I
you
want to
say
get to
things
lunch.
like that, yeah, can I just go to lunch? And you can
My
come
family's
with me.
waiting on me.
Yeah.
We really
You
want to
can-
go to lunch. We
Yeah.
want some fish tacos. I really don't want to be having this conversation right now.
Exactly. I'm not mad at you. So you're still but that's the difference in acting and reacting. Take charge. You're the leader. Take charge and deal with it. Those complainers don't last very long anyways. They eventually leave. So as we are also out of time. Thank you so much for listening. And we hope that you enjoyed this episode. We hope that you feel some relief from these sort of encouragements. We will catch you next week.